Oh, New York ain't New York anymore. How I miss those old pals of mine.
What happens when a legendary sports writer looks back nearly a century to recall his upbringing as a Jewish kid, as Hitler made war on the world, and Wall Street made living at home not much fun? We'll get that first-person account from an author who's closing in on a century, but showing no signs of slowing down. Hello, history lovers, and welcome. I'm your host, Dean Karayanis, and this is the History Author Show on iHeartRadio, and a special tip of the cap to everybody who's enjoying today's time travel adventure via our YouTube channel. You can find me at historyauthor.com, and you can read my columns at the New York Sun. Mostly their analysis of current events through the history I've learned in all of these books behind me, but often sports is the news, and sports certainly is a huge part of culture and of today's story, so sometimes I get those sports columns in as well. In this episode, our time machine welcomes aboard a real time traveler. My guest's name is Jerry Izenberg, and his memoir, the most personal of his many books, is titled Baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs, Growing Up Jewish in the 1930s in Newark. Mr. Izenberg is one of just two daily newspaper columnists to have covered the first 53 Super Bowls. He's also been there for 54 consecutive Kentucky Derbies and for the last 5 Triple Crown winners. Mr. Izenberg also earned the Red Smith Award for sports writing and has been named the New Jersey Sportswriter of the Year 5 times. Oh, one last thing. He's also an inductee in 17 Halls of Fame. He faced anti-Semitism, the Great Depression, and World War II. But through all that, he had one love, baseball. And that helped him to get through the tough times and gave him some of the greatest moments in his life, which he shared with all of us as readers. Okay, now that we've arrived back in New Jersey's largest city during the 20th century's toughest decades, let's join Jerry Izenberg for Baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs. And here we are with Jerry Izenberg. He's joining us to chat about baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs. Sir, it's a real honor, and I want to thank you for making the time to chat with the History Author Show.
Well, it's good to be here. It's good to be anywhere at my age.
If I stop every time to laugh at you, as I had the time to do in columns, but when I would read you, but I can't do that here, or else we'll never get done. But that's a great way to start this book, because this book starts with laughter. It starts with literally how it all began, and follows into what may be the first ever first-person account of getting a bris. So that gives people an idea what they're getting here out of Baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs. I wanted to ask, would your parents approve of the way that you begin the book, saying that they threw back the covers, put their arms around each other, and created you? That's how it starts.
I think if they were here, they would have forgotten what it means.
So, see what I said about the laughter? This is what you're getting, and I mean it sincerely out of the book. Which one of them contributed to your sense of humor? We're going to get into your father and your love of baseball, him sharing that with you. But which one of them did you get the sense of humor and the desire to write from?
Well, the sense of humor was a defense mechanism. I was not a very gregarious kid. I didn't have a ton of friends. I had a couple of really good ones, but not a lot. And I always sort of went my own way, and I always found that humor was the best way to shut someone up. Didn't work with Hitler, but I think they gave it a try.
You had your bout with boxing too, so maybe I'll skip ahead to that, because that's something that we get here in the book, is the story of you put on some boxing gloves, and it was such a different world back then. Then, of course, later you get to meet the champs. You wrote more about Muhammad Ali than anybody else. Had this just incredible career. So I wanted to ask, since you covered more of his fights than anyone else, what will readers learn here in Baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs about the sport of boxing?
In my book, there's a lesson to learn. The Schmeling Lewis fight is in my book. And by the way, it's the 80th anniversary of that fight next week. So there was a guy, I'm going to tell you a story behind that fight because you're going to apply it here. There was a guy named Harry Sperber. Harry Sperber was a German refugee, Jew, came to this country. He was a newspaper guy. So we used to have like 19 language, English language, and we had German language, a bunch of them in New York City. We had a lot, and where I worked for a few years. And he gets a job with Staatszeitung, which is a German language paper here. And he goes up to Speculator, New York. In Speculator, New York, he's training, Schmeling was training to play the rematch with Lewis. One of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. You play a quarter, you get to see the ex-champ and the challenger box in that outdoors in Speculator. All the writers are down there. Harry Sperber is sneaking up the hill and gets in, the doors open, into Schmelling's cottage. And he's looking for some way to make this a Nazi American fair. There was none of that at the signing. He opens a closet door. The trainer, and he thinks it's Schmeling, but it's not. The trainer is named Max Mack. There's a freshly laundered and pressed stormtrooper uniform in the closet. Well, he runs down to where the box gets all the American writers, half of whom were Jewish in New York, up the hill. Look at this. They all write that day, and now the fight becomes us against them. That's how that happened. The story was, as I got older, I knew them both. And I missed Cain and Abel by about a year, but I knew those two guys well. And my dad was convinced that Roosevelt, let it be known he had called Lewis and said, "You're fighting for America. You've got to do this." And Lewis was ready to go. That's according to the myth. Schmeling had knocked Lewis out once, cold, and knew how to beat him then, thought he knew this time, but it didn't work. He went and looked at a film just before he fought Lewis the first time. Saw Lewis on film and turned to Max Mack, and the trainer was there, and he said, "I think I see something." And what he saw was Lewis dropping his left hand after he threw the right. Max waited, bang, 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 8, 9, 10, over. Lewis's first defeat. That's why Lewis was steamed. Had nothing to do with Franklin Roosevelt. It had to do with the fact that this guy had knocked him out first time and beat him badly because he saw something. Meanwhile, Schmeling, he wasn't fighting for Hitler. He was fighting because he beat this guy once. He was too old to win the title, everybody said, but he could win it now. That's what motivated him. When I told my father that story, he reacted as all Jews react when they got something negative in their mind. He said, I said, "Look, I know these guys, and this is what I'm," and he said to me, "Well, that's a nice theory, but you're still full of crap." And he said the same thing when you got to understand I got off your question, but it's a good story for you. 1938 was a big year in my life. 37, 38, because I turned 80. The picture behind you, I was not almost 9 then. So I'm 8. First thing happens is a fellow named Hank Greenberg is hitting home runs. And he's going to catch Ruth. He's going to pass Ruth. Now, there were 2 topics you could talk about at the dinner table. One was baseball. I should say it was not dinner, it was supper table, kitchen. And the first was baseball. My father had been a minor league baseball player, and that was very acceptable. And he lived a life of frustration because he never got to run out into the polo grounds and play second base. So you could talk baseball, You could talk Hitler and the Nazis. We lived 10 blocks from the Irvington Newark border. Irvington was the state headquarters of the German-American Bund. Anybody crossing that borderline, either way, there was trouble, always trouble. And if this was the 30s, anti-Semitism. Look, you're talking about anti-Semitism, right? I'm rambling a little bit, but it's all going to go to the same point. We had Gerald L.K. Smith, a lay minister in the Ozarks, who built a resort hotel and invited all the right-wing Jewish-hating people to come there as a resort. And every night he put on a play called The Perfidious Jews Circumcised. The Perfidious Jews Children. Let me start this again. Sound like a mighty truth. It was about the death of Jesus, and it figured the Jews. Well, people went at a great time, and the ideas were reinforced. We had William Dudley Pelley, minor league Nazi. Hitler and Mussolini took all the good colors, the brown shirts and the black shirts. So he became the silver shirts in Boston. And he used to come down to Newark with them on Sunday because another guy, Father Coughlin, a radio priest of the air from Royal Oak, Michigan, was preaching anti-Semitism, had a newspaper called Social Justice. And they would sell it in front of Blessed Sacrament Church on my corner. And Pelly sent these two guys down with the truncheons and the uniform to stand next to the salesman. Anybody said he made a remark, they beat the crap out of him. I was here one day when they beat the crap out of a guy who said something, and the cop on the beat turned and walked away. I mean, this was the climate of opinion in those days. Well, one day my father is listening. The radio is always on in the kitchen. I'm a first generation American, so it comes from the notion. Better listen to the news because something might be happening to you and you don't know it. So it was on all the time. Father Coughlin comes on here. My father didn't know who he was, never heard. And my dad was then working 5.5 days a week. He'd been cut back from 6. And this is the Depression, the heart of the Depression. So Coughlin comes on and he says, I know why you're struggling so. I know why it's hard for you to make a living. It's Wall Street, Wall Street, Wall Street. And I'm going to tell you why next week. My father says to my mother, I remember it like it was yesterday, he says, you know, this guy makes some sense. I'm going to send him $3 donation. Following week, we're in the kitchen, we're having supper. The radio priest of the air comes on. He says, I told you last week I tell you about Wall Street. It's the Jew, the Jew, the Jew. He's what's happening. My father's got his, really relished his 1 cup of coffee at night. He had it in his hand, pushing it toward his lips. Threw the cup at the wall and broke it in a million pieces. Now my sister, you know, I'm getting into this way. She just keeps quiet, she's eating. And I'm very interested in what's going to happen next. He turns to my mother and he says to her, I gave that mumser, which in Yiddish means bastard. I gave that mumser $3 last week. $3. My mother looks at him and she says, you think maybe we could get a refund? That you mentioned my mother, that's how she approached all problems. There was always a solution. Sometimes it was a devious one. My father they needed to send me to military school. They didn't need, I wish they hadn't, but they did. I was a rotten kid. I mean, never to them, never to them. But every teacher and I had a problem. I mean, I was awful. And my father didn't have the money. And I had an aunt, Tante Annie. Tante Annie made us her kids. She never had any kids. That was a pain in the ass for me because she kept pinching my cheeks and I'd be playing. We didn't live near any parks. I'm playing touch football in the street. She visited my mother just about every day. She goes home. She gets on the phone. Shut Lois down, my sister. Shut Lois down. Get him out of the street. He's going to get killed by a car. He's going to get killed. This is what I had to deal with. And the cheek pinching. But she saved my family in many ways. My dad needed a cataract operation, very delicate operation in those days. When you had it, they tied you to the bed so you couldn't move your head. And he didn't have the money to have it. She gave my mother the money. He knew where my money came from. He would have had the operation. The first supermarket in Newark opened a block away from me, just an Acme supermarket. I'd go up to a little red wagon, and the housewife would come out, and I'd say, you don't have to carry that. Put it in the wagon, and I'll take it, and I get a quarter. And sometimes I make $2 a day. So she gave my mother the money. My mother says, the supermarket, you'd be right. We're living like millionaires. I saved so much money having. Go into that picture on it. There's money in there. I don't know how much it is, but I'm sure it's enough for your operation. She knew how much it was, and she knew how much the operation was. So he took it and thanked her, and never knew that my aunt put up the money. Never would have touched it. Well, so now we also had Charles A. Lindbergh, America's hero. Trump talks about America first, America first. That was the name of Lindbergh's organization. Lindbergh was a Nazi. He was a freaking Nazi. And he said, we can't win a war with Germany. We should make them our friends. And he became the president of America first. I remember sitting in the living room one day. My father's got the Newark Star Lake all rolled up in a ball, fires it at the wall, and says, lucky Lindy, my ass. There was strong. Therefore, when I was 8, when that picture was taken, and my sister was 10, we were the only 2 kids in the state of New Jersey, I'm sure, who knew what the Reichstag was, where it was, and who burned it. Because we talked about Hitler and the Nazis and the Bund almost every night. And the picture on it, that is the story behind the picture on it, and that's how Nedick got into the story. Look closely behind my father, there's a movie market. It's the Newsreel Theater. My father couldn't sit still for more than 30 minutes, and that was the show. It was real. That's where it goes. One day he says to me, what are you doing Saturday? I said, I'm playing baseball. He said, no, you're not. What do you mean? You're going with me? Well, I don't want to go, but you're going with me. We go downtown. That's right over his right shoulder is the marquee of the theater. We go in there because the previous week, the Nazis had the Madison Square Garden rally. And 19,000 people, 12,000 of them in stormtroopers. Floor to ceiling cut out of Hitler. Floor to ceiling cut out of Washington. The Nazis, the swastika everywhere. He wanted me to see that. He was determined. We went to the theater. My father lost it. My father was wounded in World War I. He enlisted the first day that they declared war. He was wounded in World War I. Now we're coming out of the theater. And he said, those monsters, those bastards. I helped stop them in 1917 and again in 1918. And I'm deaf in one ear because of them. They got to be stopped again. Well, it wasn't the Nazis when he went, but he kind of wrote his own history as he went along. And as a result of that, I had to see it. He's walking out the door and he goes into his diagram and he says, they got to be stopped now. I'm 8 years old. I look up at him and I said, well, they're in Berlin, aren't they? He looks at me and he says, no, Jerry. They're here. I say, where? I'm looking around. I want to see, are they hiding behind the building? They're going to grab me. And I obviously showed that. My father said, hey, listen, how about lunch? How about a Nedick's hot dog? And I said, only with an orange drink. That was the combination of Nedick. They were so freaking big in New Jersey and New York. The old garden on 49th and 50th Street, half the lobby was devoted to a Nedick's fast food place. And anyway, it all came together. And now it's a repetition in many ways. So now he's really determined to do something about it. He couldn't do much with it. After all, he couldn't go back to the war. And he was 45 years old when I was born. But that put one of the 3 most important things I learned was from my parents. One was really, you have to stand up for what's right. Whatever it is you have to say. He once said to me, if a woman or a girl's in trouble, I was a kid then, so he really met a girl. It's your business. And if it's your sister, break his neck. That conversation started because one day I came home. I had seen, when sidewalk is not tended right, it tilts a little bit. They said, somebody had written in blue chalk, all Jews are kites. Well, I knew I couldn't fly. I was that smart anyway. And I told my old man, what does this mean? What does this mean? He said, it means it's the work of a moronic illiterate. The word is kike, not kite. Sometimes it's Feeney. Sometimes it's Jewish. Here's the thing. I'm not going to count it. Don't come home and say that Charlie told you that Jimmy said. That doesn't count. If somebody gets in your face and says one of those, here's what you're going to do. You're going to smile so he relaxes. You're going to hit him with the best right hand you ever do, right in the mouth. And if you don't finish with the left hook, don't come home. Well, I don't think he meant the last part, but I know he meant the first part. And I lost a lot of fights that way, too, because anti-Semitism was everywhere.
Well, you had to try.
As far as my past goes, I was on the radio about a couple of weeks ago, and a guy said to me, of all the active sports writers, you are the sports columnist, you are the dean. How did that happen? I said, well, it's very sad. I hate to be the one to break the news to you. They're all dead. Yeah. To me, you don't forget things that are important. My memory's not the best that night. So I'll say this. That book over your right shoulder there was written with no notes. I didn't know I was going to write this book. It was 92 years of memory, and I left a lot of good stuff out. I want to buy all the books back and put it in there because other things I'd forgotten.
That's why you're here. You could tell me. That's the idea, guy. I want people to definitely pick up Baseball's Nazis and Nedick's Hot Dogs to get what you wrote in there. But here we're getting a little more, and I think people are getting a flavor of maybe literally there in the case of those great hot dogs of what you experienced growing up in a world that's gone, a world that again, I'm speaking with Jerry Izenberg here, and he's the author of Baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs, Growing Up Jewish in the 1930s in Newark. And I wanted to quote Pulitzer Prize winner Ira Berkow. He says the book's an autobiographical account of a dramatic era in our history by one of the finest American sports writers, that is, one of the finest American writers, a beautifully crafted and touching recollection of those times. That says it really well. And I think the thing about touching is you touch all the bases here from the very beginning, which I guess is a sports pun, but you make people really feel what you're feeling, taste what you're feeling, smell what you're feeling. That's good writing. Well,
to me, the best things I've done, the guy from Minnesota who was traded to the Phillies, and I forget the name of it, these jerky movements again. And sometimes he curse out loud. He goes to the Phillies and he says, I'm going to keep my mouth shut because who knows, I'm going to meet a guy, nice to meet you, motherfucker. I don't know what I'm going to do, so I'll be quiet. He shows up and the players walk over. They knew he could hit. Glad to have you on the club and, I hope you're happy. He doesn't say anything, nothing. And the whole first morning workout is finished. He comes back, he's eating a sandwich, got his shoes off, he's sitting in front of his locker. That's nothing. I have to tell you the whole scene. That's how you become a writer. And I forget who it was came over and said, well, we're glad to have you. He didn't say a word. So he looked at me, he laughed and said, well, nice talking with you. And when they found out what it was, I forget what it's called, that was the word that, if you had a good game, they walk over and say, nice talking with you, nice talk. It was and he was part of the job. More than that made him part of the team. And you have to understand the psychology of real athletes. There are three kinds of athletes. Athletes who are great and deliver and to know there's a bigger world than they are. Then there's the athletes who are great and think they are the world. Then there's the athletes who are not very good, are going to live off what they're going to do, and are going to be us against you. And that's what, and when I first covered the Yankees, I was already writing a column by then. I was the youngest columnist in the country, I think, of a major paper. And the furthest west city was St. Louis. So it was great. We went by train. We traveled with the team. They didn't pay for us. We were on the same train. We ate lunch sometimes or dinner. We played cards. I didn't play cards because dice was my game. But anyway, we knew each other. They were making more than us, but not that much more. Nobody was making any money doing anything then. And that all disappeared with free agency and all the money. And baseball, in some ways, is dying compared to what it was. The newspaper business, in a lot of ways, is dying compared to what it was. And the reason is the same in both cases. I had to write a book, I called it Autopsy, Death by Suicide. The newspapers came into the internet. You can't count on the internet for anything. I don't care how many accolades. And you notice on television, they're all writing, they all say, the New York Times said, the Washington Post said, they're not saying we found out. There's a difference. And that's the big change. We produce 2 or 3 television generations who are devoid of what I call intellectual curiosity. And a country without intellectual curiosity becomes a kind of country that's got the phone down, they're hitting it. I came here to Henderson, Nevada. I'm here a week. I mean, I knew the town and everything because I used to come here all the time for fights. My wife and I moved. We're sitting in a casino coffee shop. And I say, look at those 2 girls. And 2 girls about 18, 19. They're both not looking at each other. And I said, you know what makes it even sadder? They're talking to each other. That was my conclusion. But that, I remember that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I go into a store, a drugstore right across the highway here. And I pick up something I bought it was about $1.94, and I hand the girl behind the counter a $5 bill. She says, "Oh dear, I'm not good at making change." I said, "Listen, sweetheart, I'm great at making change when it's coming in my direction. I'll back you up." She says, "Wait a minute." She reaches in his glove, pulls out a handheld calculator. "Here's your change." I said, this is a true story, don't they teach you anything in high school about math? She looked at me and she said, "I'm not in high school. I go to the College of South Nevada." Where are we headed?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, this is the reason that I wanted to speak to you today about your book, because if you know a young person, to put a book in their hands. My mother-in-law lives up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and she said she gave one of her grandkids $100. Now, in my day, certainly in your day, you're talking the 30s and 40s here in the book. That's a lot of money. And she said, my grandson looked at me and said, "What am I going to do with this? Because everything's digital now." Literally, the cash didn't, and that shows how different, I think. And this book, it's from so long ago, from another world. You're a voice from this world. That's why I refer to you in the intro as this is a time traveler here, ladies and gentlemen. 92 years you've been there, like Zelig. At all of these great sporting events and great moments, and the Schmeling fight and all of these things, and you did it with your name proudly. And I think there's a tendency, certainly back in your day, to Americanize your name. If they did want to do what a lot of sports writers do now, they want to change their name to Jerry Ice or something. They want to shorten it. Was there ever any feeling? And what do you think that young kid, that young Jerry, would think today, knowing you've stamped that name proudly, literally in the pages of history? What would he think?
More important is what my father would say. My sister wanted to be an actress. She came home from Ohio State, and she was told television was just coming in. They're going to control advertising. That's what she was told by a guy who knew because he was an advertiser. And he said, change your name, go to work in a studio, doing something, anything, but keep telling people who look like they have some position of authority, you want to be a performer, you want to be. And eventually it could happen. She drops the I-Z off the front of the name. She drops the G off the end of the name, and she becomes Lois Enberg. My father says to me about that time, I'm going to college. We're an urban school. I always correct everybody. It's not Rutgers, it's Rutgers Newark. Although I say Newark Rutgers.
I went to New Brunswick, so I know the difference. I did take one class in Newark a summer.
Well, I'll tell you, it was a whole different world. Everybody at school worked. I worked 40 hours a week at night to go to college. My father, who came here at age 8 from Lithuania, I'm the first generation American. After the military school episode, and I wish they would buy the book and read it because I don't want to waste your time me telling it to you. But those high school military years, they shaped me in a lot of ways too. I went back as the keynote speaker there. The only time I went there, 60 years after I graduated. And I said, you want to know why I'm here? I want to tell all you how much I hated this place. Hated it. Now these people, this down the deep south is the South, right? Many of them didn't go to college. This was their college degree. The school went bankrupt. That alumni association is still active because that was their college. And they think I want to get up and tell them what a great place, how this. I said, it shaped me all right. It taught me one thing. It taught me sometimes when people who are full of shit tell you can't do this, you're going to go do it. That's what I learned here. And I thank you, everybody here, for helping teach me. I remember the teacher I had in military school, one of the two good teachers I had in my entire life anywhere. He didn't quite get me either. He was my basketball coach, and he thought he was my JV baseball coach, except he saw me in the outfield for one inning, and he knew talent. And he said, congratulations, you just became the scorekeeper for this team. Not the left fielder. And he said to me, I'm getting ready to graduate, what are you going to do? I assume you're going to college. I said, my old man wants me to go to college. I don't have the money. He has less money than I have, and I'm in high school. And I want to go in the Army. I'll get my GI Bill. Everybody conspires to put me in positions I don't want to be in, but usually they come out good. I wound up in the Army because I wanted to go because when Korean War didn't start. My sophomore year, 70,000 North Koreans come across the border, and now my college is a very different affair. When I come out of school, I'm not going to have a choice. I'm going to Korea. But you learn things by accident. There are no coincidences. There are accidents that you do not take advantage of. Because most of the stuff I learned by accident, in grammar school, as you know from reading the book, I was obsessed. I was this is after the third grade, but in the fourth grade, fourth or fifth grade, I sat next to a girl named June. And I always looked at her in the corner of my eye because she wore sweaters that were a size too tight to school. And I kept saying, what are those bumps? What are those? So I asked my mother, June has these bumps. They're interesting, but what are they? And my mother said, ask your father. So I go to see my father. You know what he's going to say? Ask your mother. And I decided, what she did, what I decided was, obviously she's got some terminal disease and they know I like her, so they don't want to discuss with her. 2 years later, I found out what those bumps were. Not her bumps, but I found out what those bumps were. You find out things by accident, and it's great if you can take the knowledge that you acquire and put it so as if it's legitimate. It may come back to you 9 years later. I wrote that whole book on knowledge, and the book that we're talking about. I'm in Nevada where you cannot get pizza. Yeah, you can buy it at 100 places, but it ain't pizza. It's the water. Bill Clinton says the economy, it's the water. And that's why Newark at one point had 5 breweries. The water. And they moved to Milwaukee. The water. There's a guy out here who has the best pizza, but not great. These people think it's good and much. Well, they never had pizza. They eat the pieces of cardboard is what this is out here.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't know. Going back to the guy in high school, the coach, said, well, you got to go to college. I said, yeah, well, I think I'd like to be a writer. He said, well, you have talent, which is why we're talking about it. What kind of writing would you like to do? I said, well, my old man gave me a love of baseball, and he was a believer. I think I'd like to be a sports writer. He looks at me like he's trying to scrape dog off the bottom of his shoe. And then he says to me, well, if you ever get serious about writing, write what you know. I once wrote a column, and so many people criticized me. Said, how can you write about that World Series game? Sandy Koufax is setting the record for World Series strikeouts. There was a guy named Harry Bright, a lifer in the minor leagues. And he finally gets traded to the Yankees. He's been in baseball about 11 years. He's the last batter Koufax has to pay. I go to him after the game, not Koufax. First of all these guys, everybody else had to the curve work. I didn't want to be involved. I went to Harry Bright. I said, what was it like? He said, let me tell you, and nobody was there. I mean, nobody wanted to talk to him. He said, let me tell you, I played in cities, if I tell you the names, you won't even recognize. 11 years, 13 years, whatever it was. And suddenly I'm in the major. Suddenly I'm in the World Series. And suddenly I'm playing a World Series game in our own park. And I get up and 60,000 people are rooting for me to strike out. How do you think it felt? That tells you more about the emotion in it. That's what you have to look for. That's what you have to do. I was in high school. My dad, of course, the Giants were, I'll tell you this part of it. My dad had an old Philco radio. It's got to be the strongest machine ever built. Because he would sit at one end of the porch and Mel would strike out, bang, bang on the top of it. Carl Hubbell would throw a wild pitch, bang, bang. At the other end of the porch was my mother and Rabbi Joachim Prince, very famous rabbi. Just for the record, he was the warm-up man for Martin Luther King on the Mall. He introduced Martin Luther King. More important than that, he bar mitzvah Jerry Izenberg. And that was not an easy task. Dr. Aaron Krantz was the bar mitzvah teacher. And Dr. Prince would come to my house every summer night. My father screaming at the radio at one end of the porch. They're talking very softly the other end because that was his rule. No interruptions for the ball game. One night he breaks the rule. He says, Harry, he's halfway up the porch, I need a favor. My father looks at him and says, not now. Mel is coming to bat. I am convinced that on that night, the Messiah, the real Messiah, comes to 80 Shanley Avenue and says, Harry, it's time we have the talk. And my father says, can I wait 5 minutes? Mel is coming to bat. So in this night when he broke the rule, my father got out of your mind. After he finished, he said, now what is it you want? I said, well, gotta tell you, I want you to teach me baseball. My father says, I don't think you care. He says, I don't. My 2 sons are here with me. I want them to have a relationship over baseball with me like you have with Jerry. So my father talks to him. My mother gets up, she knows what's coming. She leaves the porch. My father talks for an hour about baseball. Telling my father to talk about baseball was like giving my first wife a valid credit card. Didn't know when to stop. So he says to my father, I don't know what I can do for you in return. I never see you in shul, temple. Never see you there. And the truth was, I saw him there twice. Once for my bar mitzvah, and the second for his funeral. But I will tell you this, he was more of a Jew. Some of the ideas he couldn't voice, but he knew. And Dr. Prince says, I know what I'm going to do. I'm supposed to go on vacation in September. But Jerry gets bar mitzvah. I'll cancel my vacation. And Harry, I'll give you a real bar mitzvah. I'll concentrate on Jerry. How's he doing with his Haftorah? That's what I said. How do I know? I don't even know what the Haftorah is. He said, tell him to come out here and bring his book. Well, 2 beats before that, I should have gone out the back door. But it's summer, the windows are open, I'm in the living room, I hear the conversation on the porch. I'm stuck. I know something neither of them knows. My voice is changing. My father hears it every day. He doesn't realize what it is. He says, all right, chant for me. And at that point, he puts his hand in his head. This guy who knows 4 languages. And so when he said, stop, I'm begging you, stop. 4 more like you, we will be slaves in Egypt again. I'm taking over this bar mitzvah. Well, it got to the point, I'm playing baseball. Badly. Oh, so badly, but I want to be a second baseman like he was, right? Now, he says, I'm talking to Dr. Aaron Krantz Monday. I said, he's going to get a surprise. Dr. Aaron Krantz doesn't know who I am. He has never seen me. I'm supposed to be taking bar mitzvah instruction now for about 6 months. And so first he's going to know I exist, and then all hell is going to break loose with everybody. Coming home from school on Monday, I got my baseball glove with me. If I turn right, I'm going home. If I turn left, I'm going to the ball. I turn left. Dr. Aaron Krantz comes to visit my mother. I'm playing baseball. And he walks the way I walk now. He walks like a herniated hairpin. He's got that stenosis in his back. And he's got the beaver hat. And he's got the tzitzits hanging down, from the inside of his suit. Always has a suit. And he rings the doorbell. My mother says, who are you? And he says, you're Jerry Izenberg. So I know who I am. Who are you? I'm Dr. Aaron Krantz. And then why are you here? I'm looking for Jerry. But aren't you the bar mitzvah teacher? Yes, I am. So you should know where he is. He must be with you. You see, he's not with me. Where is he? At that point, my sister, always eager to please if it screwed me. She said, I know where he is. I will take you there. She grabs him by the arm. She walks him to the ball field. He sees it. The only thing he sees. These kids yelling, hollering. One person he sees, the guy playing second base. Jerry Izenberg. They're playing the ball. Pitcher's throwing the ball to him. He's walking through all this while the game is going. Got me by the ear. Pulls me out on the street. Walks me up Clinton Avenue. Past Seymour, past Farley, past Tracy, past Bullock, and then to Shannon where I live. But on the corner is a temple. Takes me up the steps without ever letting go of my ear. Sit, that's where you will sit in that classroom. That's where, from now on, Dr. Prince has told me, you are special. And I'm going to find out how special you really are. He found out. He was dying. He was terrified of me getting up there and doing something wrong, which I did. And my sister comes to me. I used to call her Goody Two-Shoes. She comes to me and says, you're going to do the right thing today. I thought she was encouraging me about my bar mitzvah. You're going to go, you're going to apologize to Dr. Aaron Krantz for all you put him through. I said, I'm not going to. Why should I do that? It's the right thing to do. She haunted me with that phrase all my life. She probably made me a better person. I go there the morning to bar mitzvah. He's an ultra Orthodox Jew. I opened it. I can't see him. There's smoke. I looked, there's an air. He's Orthodox. He's smoking at Shabbos. The big ashtray. There's like 21 cigarette butts in it. He's terrified about what I'm going to do. And I said, I want to thank you for being patient and for not telling my parents about bad language. But I got to tell you, I'm not going to let you down today. He says, you're not going to let me down no matter what you do. You're going to answer to a higher authority. Don't screw it up. But he didn't say screw it. Now, I'm up on, this is the most ornate prayer thing. We don't belong to this temple. We don't belong to any temple. This is the most ornate temple in New Jersey at the time. There's a pulpit with 6 marble stairs going on either side. I'm going to get the big traditional handoff of the Torah, walk down those steps, walk through the congregation, reach the first one, and walk back up. Except it didn't go as planned. The rabbi goes to make the handoff of the Torah, right? He turns left, I turn right. I have to make me cover. He hits me in the shoulder with the Torah. I'm juggling it like this. I'm at the top of the steps. I have to go down those steps. I haven't got, this handoff would have not made the pen realize. I really can't quite muster. It's still sideways on my shoulder. I'm going down the steps. I turn and I look at Dr. Prince, who no longer has eyes. He's just got 2 lasers staring at me, staring at me. I think, oh God, what does every 13-year-old boy think of 74 hours a day? Girls and sex. I'm on the 3rd step, 1 to go, and I look at him and I say, oh, if I drop, it's a thing now, it's not the Torah anymore, that's God. If I drop this thing, don't put a curse spell on me, I won't get a hard on the rest of my life. But I recover.
These are the stories in the book. I want you to know, sir, my face, I haven't been showing myself much, mostly because you've been talking about, my face hurts and from laughing. And it's hard to just laugh out loud in a book. It's hard to be smiling because you feel all of these feelings and these emotions.
I laughed when I wrote it.
Yeah, okay. And you said you didn't think you'd finish. You had to know you would finish.
Well, I laughed because I was all my memories I hadn't thought about years. And then I said, I couldn't have been that. I realized what an asshole I couldn't have been that bad. I couldn't have been this bad. But I was. The best, I would go to military school. I didn't want to be there. The commandant, maybe he and his wife called him a commandant. To me, he's no commandant. He's the algebra teacher. I'm failing algebra. He's the worst teacher I've ever had in my life. The only one I had a worse experience with was I always dated older women. And I met this girl two grades ahead of me at the schoolyard. I said, you want to go to the movies Saturday? Yeah. Anyway, we go to the movies. The lights go out. I get fresh. She slaps me in the face. But she had a free ride, so she moves 5 seats. And she's watching the movie. I found out on Monday, she's my teacher's daughter. That was an interesting year.
Shocking that teachers didn't all love you.
And remember, I always say happenstance, I'm in military school. And I go to the algebra commandant, I say, because he said, my door is always open. Your problems are my problems. Okay. So away we go. I come in, I knock on the door, 6 o'clock at night. Kentucky Izenberg reporting, sir. Why are you here? Well, you said your door is always open. And I have a request. What's your request? The request is, I'm failing algebra. You know it better than I do. Only way I can pass is by throwing myself on the mercy of the court. But if you'll give me an extra hour after lights out, I'll get caught up. He looks at me and says, why is it you Jews always want a bigger piece of the pie? I can't tell you what was trying to come out of my mouth. It couldn't get loose because I was biting my tongue too hard. And I said to him, yes, sir, yes, sir. And I was furious. I'm getting a bigger piece of the pie. He's a born-again Christian. I'm a Jew. But why is it if I'm getting the bigger piece of the pie? On Saturdays as a rat, freshman, I have to go to mandatory YMCA meeting. On Saturday, as a rat, I have to sing Living for Jesus. And finally, every once a month, he brings in an evangelist named Kerry Barker, who's telling me as a rat, if you don't come forward now and accept Jesus, you're going to burn in hell for eternity. I said, I might want a bigger piece. He swallowed the whole damn pie. So I spent my whole military high school trying to get even with him and the band director. The band director I could beat because I was a very gifted musician. That's what I wanted to do for a living. And I played 4 instruments. I took arranging and composing. And I got to get this guy. My senior year, he was a new instrument, the baritone player at that time. Reasonably heavy. I think it's 4 valves. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Did you say baritone horn?
Yeah.
That's what I played.
Oh, then you know.
Rutgers University Marching Band.
Oh, then you know what I'm talking about. This was a marching band. And he throws it on my lap and he says, you know everything. You've told everybody in the school you know everything. So you'll figure out how to play it. Don't bother me with it. You're the baritone horn player now.
That's how they get y'all.
And
That's very similar how they got me.
Yeah, then he says, and the only thing I will tell you is the fingering is the same as the trumpet. And as he's walking off, I holler, I never played the freaking trumpet. And he's gone. Well, you know the baritone horn is probably the easiest thing in the band to play. I mastered it in like 4 days. Because I went, when I was a musician, but I also went to the trumpet player, show me the fingering and whatever else. He had said to me, the first dress parade is in 12 days. You better play it by then. Oh, familiar.
There you go. That's the.
How many valves? How many valves?
3 valves, sir.
That's right.
Don't take my mouthpiece.
And it's easy to master because it's really more of an umpa counterpart instrument.
No brass.
So I got it. Mine was silver. So I got it. So I got it. 3 or 4 days I got it. Go to the first dress parade, which I didn't mind going to because that was a chick magnet, the white ducks in the spring. And the girls came from all over Virginia. All right, so now I go through the first, and I'm saying, I showed him, and I'm saying, I didn't show him anything. Where's my revenge? I filled a hole for him. I got to do something. So my roommate, who knew me quite well, said, stop talking about your revenge. You've done everything but blow up the chemistry lab. You can't get in any more trouble. I said, you watch. And he starts trying to battle the most sensitive thing to him at all. Because he was, you have to do. John Philip Sousa wrote the Washington Post, march like this, you will play it like this, and you will enjoy it. So I did the Stars Spangled Banner, the second dress parade every Sunday. And we got to the rockets, red glare, and the bombs bursting in there. I put a jazz riff in the middle of it. And I thought he would die. I thought I was going to go to a funeral. I played the bang along last time at his funeral. We get back to the band room, he says to me, don't you ever, ever, ever. And someone says, I thought that was pretty good, Major Lance. I really liked it. We should keep it, and we'll be distinctive as a marching band. He was just trying to push his buttons, too. But I won that war. I'll tell you, you don't turn negatives into positives by emotion. You turn them in when you're so violently for or against the possibility of whatever it is happens. It's when you get an opportunity, you grab it. You learn from everything you do.
David Petruccia, next book is going to be Gangsterland, about jazz age New York. But he also wrote Rothstein, about Rothstein fixing the World Series game. So he wanted to ask.
I think the idea of baseball as a major Americanization force is a common one. I know that my mentor in sports publishing, John Thorne, who was born in Stuttgart in a refugee camp in 1947, says the same thing. And I guess the point of divergence for most folks is that they want to be a second baseman or a center fielder, a quarterback, but not necessarily a sports writer. What was it that set your path on to not just observing and loving the national pastime, but writing about it?
It's a good question, but I can't give you the romantic answer that everybody wants to hear and everybody wants to do. I spent years trying not to write sports. I began in this business chasing fire engines and reading police blotters. And that was an invaluable experience. But every time that I got into sports, well, that was because I was getting ready to graduate. I was a junior in college, and I got a job. I was putting out the school newspaper, and I got a job with the Ledger, being a high school correspondent, and then I was head of all the high school people. I would take these phone calls at 6 at night, whatever. And every time I wanted to get out, something happened. I wanted to get out when I graduated because I was offered a full-time job, but I wanted to go to the draft board and say, Korean War was on, take me early. And it's in the book. She says, do you have a mental disorder? Nobody ever asked me that. I want to go in. If you enlist, it's 3. My father enlisted, of course, not me. If you're drafted, it's 2. And in Korea, you were fighting for rotation points and all that sort of stuff. So I was going to come out, GI Bill, go somewhere, get my free college education, and then teach English or something up in a small college where I had time to write. And it didn't happen that way. I was very brave because there was no war. My sophomore year, they came across the border. And so I didn't plan to get in. I always planned to get out. In fact, there were 2 times I really made an effort. I mean, a huge effort. The last time was when I went to the editor of the paper and said, listen, I don't like what I'm doing. And I think the reason is I'm not interested in bats and balls. I'm interested in people. And now the people who are reading sports are not interested in people, or my interest in people anymore. So let me write a general column. Let me write, you don't have to, you never give me a raise yet, but let me write a general. He said, let me think about it for a week. Came back and said, you're too valuable in sports for us to do that. I said, if that's the case, prove it to me by giving me an enormous raise. They gave me a $15,000 raise. And I'm not going to turn the raise down, but I got to quit if I'm not going to. Who wants to hire me? At that point, I was getting older already. And it occurs to me, if I don't stay here, it's going to expose me. So as long as I have a typewriter, which we started with, of course, as long as I have access to newsprint that I can create, I want to see all those other guys get caught. And I think I was probably hypnotizing myself into not starting all over again, not having the guts to do whatever else. Didn't think anybody would hire me to do something. And I think I did a salesman job. Best salesman job I ever did because I never walked away. The purpose of the publishing of the book was nobody really wants stuff I write now if it's not sports. But the purpose of it was I had to say this. I had to tell this story. There's a lot, and I had to remind myself how freaking lucky I have been. Only thing I ever agreed, 2 things I agree with Ray Turkey on, signing of Jackie Robinson others. The other is that luck is the residue of design.
Jerry Izenberg, author of Baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs, we are really fortunate that the calendar didn't catch you, caught your father in his career, cut his chances of being in the majors short through no fault of his own, not to mention World War One. But I really do hope readers will pick up a copy of this book. There's times, there's alleys, there's places kids are playing stickball in the yard and that are just forgotten, and that history doesn't like to put its lens there often. It doesn't want to, maybe it wants to look away from something like those riots in Newark or something like the Great Depression. We want to move on and do everything through our phones. But pick up this book, meet some of those people. They were often, that we have a lot more in common with them than we do with maybe the big set piece people that you read about.
People don't know. After the Newark riot, the haters. Newark before the riot, when I was a kid in the 30s, Newark was a factory town, booming factory town, 410,000 people. And they never got to know each other.
Again, thank you so much for taking the time here. You've been more generous than I could have hoped. And as I said, my face hurts having listened to this. So who doesn't need a smile? Who doesn't need an inspiration to be a little bit better? Please do. Everybody out there, go check it out. Pick up the book. Don't take my word for it. Read Baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs. You'll see why Jerry Izenberg is just a legend to me and why I enjoyed reading his columns so much all those years. You won't be able to put this book down. And give it to a young person, too. Buy 2 copies. Why not?
Yeah. We'll do it again. Very enjoyable.
Again, the book is Baseball, Nazis, and Nedick's Hot Dogs. Growing Up Jewish in the 1930s in Newark. As always, you can find the Amazon link to purchase your copy of this great book at the historyauthor.com page for this episode. By buying the book through us, you help keep the flux capacitor on our time machine humming like usual. My sincere thanks to a true hero of mine, of the writing profession, and of sports, Jerry Izenberg. That he took the time to join us is really special to me. I hope all of you enjoyed listening to our conversation. This first-person journey he offers in this book, the way that he looks at the relationship with his father so fondly, it's an example for all of us, I think, in our own lives to connect with other people. And it explains the love of baseball in a way I don't think anyone else ever has or anyone else ever could. There are places, living rooms, and fields of dreams where the lenses of history rarely look. They ignore certain people and places, and this is a book that offers those corners of our past in a way that tells us so much about our present. If you enjoyed this conversation, please do subscribe at our YouTube channel for future journeys in the Wayback Machine. And you can visit historyauthor.com to find my social media accounts, as well as over 250 interviews with authors you're sure to enjoy. That's it for this installment of the History Author Show. I hope you'll join us for our next all-new interview right here on iHeartRadio or wherever you enjoyed this journey into yesterday. Until that next trip into the past together, on behalf of Jerry Izenberg and his dad, thanks so much for time traveling with us today, and have a great week.
We still call it Broadway, but what's in a name? Take it from Georgie, it isn't the same. On the east side, west side, things ain't like before. There are tears in the eyes of the regular guys. Oh, New York ain't New York anymore.